All right, Command D to get rid of the selection. And now we're ready to go in and create what we call our global adjustments. So global adjustments are those luminosity, hue, and saturation adjustments that affect the entire image in a positive manner. So very often they're very minor little tweaks, especially if you've done the right type of work in your raw processor. All right, so to begin, we're going to go in and add in a temporary adjustment layer called threshold, which is going to allow us to find the blackest point in our image. So I'm going to grab the center slider, move it all the way to the end of the visible black in the histogram, and I'm going to then pick one of the remaining black areas of black accumulation, and I'm going to blow that up, and we'll go right into here. And I'm going to then grab my sample tool. I'm going to go to an area of the black, hold down my shift key and click. So now you can see I have a point number 1 in my info palette that represents the black of our image. So very often during the optimization process, you can inadvertently change the balance of colors in your black and add in very slight contamination of either red, green, or blue. And so this allows me to monitor my black point throughout the optimization process so I can see if anything has changed. All right, so now I'm going to sample that point, and to do that, I'm going to move over to my layers, and I'm going to hold down my Control key and click and delete layer. Now I'm going to hold down my Option key and go into my curves, and I'm going to create this first curve called Global Luminosity, GL, and move my blending mode down to luminosity. Now I'm going to move over here to my black dropper, which is the first dropper, and I'm going to double click on it just to make sure that we're still set to black, which we are. And I'm going to move over to this area, and I'm going to put this dropper in the center of that spot and click, and we've now created our black point. Now I can go grab my targeted adjustment tool and see if I can do anything up here by adding just a slight amount of contrast up here without affecting the opening up of the blacks that we've worked so hard to achieve in the trees and the riverbank. So I'm going to move that back up to make sure nothing's changed down there. So now we've created a little bit of contrast but left the trees and the riverbank out of it. All right, so now I'm going to move back on over to my layers, throw away this unused layer mask. I'm going to hold down my Option key. I'm going to click down here, and I'm going to go in and create a new curve. I'm going to call this one GC, and I'm going to change the blending mode to color. That way we will not affect the luminance adjustments that we just made. This will only have an effect on the hue and the saturation. So we're going to say OK here. I'm going to now go to my center dropper, and I'm going to double click on it, make sure that this reads 128, 128, 128, which is the definition of neutral gray. I'm going to say OK. And then I'm going to move up here into this area that has this kind of a bluish cast to it. And I'm going to click. That did pretty good. No, that's not as good. Let's try this here. Nope. That looks pretty good. Let's turn this on or off. Yeah, there it is. There's the blue, and there it got rid of it. All right, so now we're going to move back to layers, and we're going to get rid of this layer mask. And we're going to search for a possible third global adjustment layer, and I think we can do that with hue saturation. So holding down my Option key, I go down and create a hue saturation, and I'll put the blend mode into color so that it only affect the hue or the saturation. And I'll say OK. Now I'm going to grab my targeted adjustment tool, and I'm going to go pick some of this kind of pinkish look here. Maybe it's best right over here. Click, it sees that as a yellow, so it's got to be a kind of a yellowish red. And I'm going to pull that up to like 25, and let's turn that on or off. Yeah, that looks good. Let's lighten it up. It's kind of given a hint of the sunset coming in. We'll do a little bit more work on that in a second. So that's a positive change.